All right, we are back again. Hold on, let me think about this. Where are we at in bait harvesting? Need to make a bunch of sweet dough. Kind of want to save for that leader tool pretty aggressively though. So the goal here is to do a little bit of bream fishing, hopefully. I feel like there's been some questions lately. All right, 3529 clip 10, by the way. There's been some questions lately about I think they're going like this. Basically like this. Okay, so we want to go 10 clip. I will get back to the questions. There's been some questions lately. Let's see, where's cheap bream? Cheap bream. We want to do large one hooks. Pearl barley, 10 clip. Let's go. Questions about what do we progress to next? Once we have this set up, kind of like what we have in our leveling series here. What comes next? I'm getting that question a good bit. And I was talking about this on stream today. Actually, I think I'll do size 9 hook. I was talking about this on stream today, and there's not really there's not just one answer to this question. It's going to be interesting to see how many points in bottom fishing we get at this point, like how quickly or slowly those points start coming in. So I will try to, I guess what I'm saying is I will try to at least speak to this a little bit. Once we're back at the store after doing a little bream fishing for this overnight. Hopefully I'll remember. We'll take a look at some of the options. Oh, we can make semolina now. Did we even make sweet dough? Like, that's just amazing. Like, how quickly we've been leveling this stuff up. It's just amazing. I haven't really noticed. Have we gotten bottom points at all? I guess we could look and see what we're at. All right, this is on Paternoster. This is on Paternoster. This is on basic bottom, and it's a different size hook. I think I'm going to change it to Paternoster once we catch another fish. Okay, so this is bream fishing. I know this is the second time we've done bream fishing, but I think this is the first time where I've like really focused on it. Because we were crafting a lot last time we threw in for bream. Bream fishing is typically like 8, 9, 10 p.m. till about 8, 9, 10 a.m. So there's like a 12 or so hour hot time of bream fishing? You want to use anywhere, I would say, from an 8 to a 1 hook. So 8 being on the small end, 1 being on the large end. You do want to use ground bait, even if it's Crucian Gibble ground bait, or like we've done, make a ground bait that's as close to real bream ground bait as possible. Real bream ground bait doesn't unlock till you're like at maybe 30, 35% or something, because you need to be able to use pearl barley as a base and anise oil as a attractant. But you can already use maggots and millet porridge. That's why you can get like fairly close to a bream recipe already. It's always, easy to figure out what the bream are feeding on the most just by looking at the weekly record. It's almost always, some of them will almost always be at Oldberg. Every once in a while, like Volkov or Tuba or something weird is popping off, but usually Oldberg is there. Right now it's cottage cheese dough, but it also can be garlic dough. It can be pea porridge. I really think if you took, especially garlic dough and cottage cheese dough, it's been yes, every once in a while it is pea porridge, but you're pretty much capturing all the different options that you're likely to see, right? But just because those are often the baits that the biggest bream are being caught at, that does not mean that it's the only baits you can use to make money off of bream. Right now we're using pearl barley, which is working very good. But just for example, out of the baits we have in our inventory right now, which is very limited, there are several of these that you could catch bream on. Worms, especially at Mosquito, casters, there's other ones here as well. Pearl barley, semolina is rare, but I think bream will bite on that. Sweet dough, same thing. I mean, there's a lot of baits, but I would say like the S tier and then the A tier are what you typically want to focus on. And that's stuff like cottage cheese dough, garlic dough, pea porridge. And then below that, pearl barley, worms, maybe castor you would include on that list, sort of that A tier list. And then there's a couple of weird ones that like I always forget that I'm like, oh yeah, that bream really like that too. Like, I can't remember. Honestly, there's so many baits that you'll catch them. Bream feed on algae, worms, insect larvae, snails. There's just so many different baits. But the nice thing about bream, well, there's so many nice things. They are typically a good bite rate. You can often catch, especially if you're using the ideal bait, which, right now we're not, but you can often catch several over a kilo, so they end up being worth a good bit of silver. It's not unusual to have cafe orders for them. I think I'm going to put a size 4 hook on this middle rod, so it'll be 1, 4, 9. Another thing I like about Bream, I've talked about this before on this series, but once you have bait harvesting at 50%, you get so many of these 500-gram Bream that you can turn into fish pieces. So it's a nice way to level up bait harvesting there for a few minutes. Okay, so if you are mostly into bottom or feeder fishing, and you don't want to, and you want to try to be like really efficient, not have to look back and feel like you wasted silver, kind of taking half steps. If you're comfortable fishing with this equipment, so if you're just going to be comfortable staying at some of the early lakes, focusing on cafe orders, coming to do bream fishing here at Old Berg, maybe going to Belaya and doing, ultralight, or not ultralight, but light spinnerbait fishing, like with the setup that we have, the arrow, this kind of thing. If you are comfortable with like kind of what we've been doing so far in this leveling series, and you're willing to keep doing that and saving silver. So like right now, we've been mostly spending, trying to get everything set up, get stuff. I've talked about once we get to 3, whatever, we might buy the tool to make a leader. But if you're comfortable doing what we're doing right now and saving thousands of silver, like 4,000 something silver per setup, and you're wanting to focus on bottom feeder fishing, moving into like carp fishing, one avenue that you could take, upgrading from where we are right now. And if I, for some reason, had to start over, let's say I decided like, okay, I no longer want my main account to be my main account. I have to start over. What I would probably do is I would go from this equipment, and I would do just what I told you about. I would hit Bream, I would hit Belaya spin fishing, I would hit cafe orders like crazy. And the silver would just come in. Like, yes, this game is grindy and it would take a little while, but that silver would just start piling up, And you'd be slowly leveling up your bottom fishing and everything else. And I would purchase 3 Fortuna carp rods and 3 caliber HSVs. Each one of those sets, so the rod and reel together, cost somewhere around 4,500 silver or something like that, maybe a little more. It's just under 5,000, I think. But with that setup, I would then be able to target carp, which is my favorite type of fishing in the game, outside of sea fishing, deep sea fishing, and sometimes trolling. But for the most part, carp fishing is like one of my favorites for sure. I would be able to fish for carp at Old Berg, at Bear, at Amber, and then like in the Tuba Pond. And so those are like 3 maps and a specific part of the Tuba map that often has really good fishing. Doing the type of fishing that I really enjoy. So I'm not even saying that this is the right way to go. But so many people ask me this question, and I'm just telling you, if it was me and I was going through all this again, this is not what I did the first time. Most of this gear wasn't even available the first time. Notice that this is over a kilo. It has a different look to it. And we also got points in bottom fishing. That is probably what I would do. So Caliber HSV allows you, with those Fortuna carp rods, to fish for just about any carp in the game on many different maps. It also allows you to do this. Now you have to have a different rod for this, but those Caliber HSV reels that I'll try to show you in the store if I remember, they allow you to get to use 2 of them on spinning rods, and you can troll, which means putting lures on them and putting them in a boat rod and pulling it around the lake. And catch predator fish that way. We haven't really gotten to much of that in this series yet, but if you watched other content or if you've seen previous leveling guides I've had or watched other people play this game, you'll know that trolling is a thing that in a lot of situations is a very fun and effective way to fish in this game. So not only can you use those Caliber HSVs for bottom fishing for carp, but you can use them for trolling for predator fish. Or you could use them for, just sitting there with a spinning setup, casting off the shore or off the boat. The only thing, the downside, the thing that's changed in this game is the most recent lake that came out. You've got to be level 29 to go here. It's Copper Lake. It's amazing. Got great carp fishing. But it's a small lake, and the lake rules prohibit carp rods, and you can't use spinning reels larger than 6,000. That means that entire setup that I just told you about, you can't use here. You can't use it at Copper. So you're actually going to need a different setup for Copper, but by the time you hit level 29, maybe you have saved up enough silver to start getting that if you're still at that point wanting to prioritize carp fishing. But if you've just started in the game, if you're fairly fresh in the game, you're a long way away from 29, which is why I still encourage people to at least consider the Fortuna carp rod and Caliber HSV route. Now, I wanted to do this video and really focus on bream fishing. I actually think until you level up bait harvesting to allow for you to make garlic dough and cottage cheese dough, maybe pea porridge as well, but I don't know that it's worth focusing on bream fishing. I think you should actually focus on leveling those things up while doing cafe orders, balaya, mosquito winding cafe orders, that kind of stuff first. I wanted to go ahead and, because I know that Pearl Barley is working decent right now, I wanted to go ahead and do this, but you're going to have a lot better result if you actually have the bait unlocked that the bream are really going after. The S tier option. So we've been here for 16 minutes and we've got 20 fish. That's a pretty good bite rate. Unfortunately, a lot of these bream have been less than marker size. In fact, we only have 3 over a kilo. That's not the percentage you want. But we don't have, the main bream bait right now. So I still say it's worth it, though, to start getting used to going for bream. You might not want to focus it quite as hard as you will later, but it is a good way to start making some silver and working on leveling up your bottom fishing, continuing to level up your bottom fishing. But the thing I'm also excited when we get to 35% bottom fishing, we can go target Crucian Gibble trophies, maybe even more intentionally than we did last episode. Was that last or 2 episodes ago? So that could be really fun as well. But we can't do that till we hit 35% in terms of using oilies. So once we do that, we can talk about how to do that, because that's really good practice for starting to like step your toe into carp fishing. Even though you're going for small carp species, it still is a very similar process that you'll eventually use for the larger carp as well. So I've just told you about the caliber HSVs and the Fortuna carp rods, and I'm going to show you those. Hopefully, remember to show you those in town once we kind of take a break from sitting here fishing for bream. And at that time, I want to point out some sort of other options. Other options, at least I would look at, and then you can sort of decide for yourself. Like, just remember, I'm not telling you all the options or the right answer. I'm just trying to give you some examples of the options you might take. It's going to be totally different depending on how patient you are, how much it matters to you to be like efficient, what type of fishing you have found that you like the most in this game, and all that. So there are a lot of options, and it will be it'll be up to you to consider. There's more option. I mean, there's more good options than I could spend the time going over. And this isn't meant to be like a full progression video. I've tried to do those in the past, of really just like walking you through different progressions. It's actually so complicated, it's hard to do that. I think we tend to oversimplify it just because we're just trying to figure out how to communicate about something that's very complicated. But the caliber HSV Fortuna carp rods, that seemed, I don't want to say obvious, but it seemed pretty straightforward as a good option until copper came out. And I still think it's a good option, but it does make you at least consider other things because of the restriction of not being able to use carp rods or 8,000 reels on copper. So now for carp fishing, you actually need two setups. You need a setup you can use everywhere else, and you need a setup you can use at copper. I don't know of anyone who is like trying to get if you got the top tier copper setup, you saved up for the top tier copper setup. Technically, you probably could use that to fish for carp almost anywhere, especially if you use braided line. You'd probably have enough on your spool to technically make that work. But at that point, you're overspending for the copper setup. You don't have to get that. Anyway, I just don't know that even that's like necessarily the way to go. So it's cool that we're starting to get crucian, roach mixed in. I assume, especially if we went to like a little bit smaller hook size, we would maybe like be able to catch a decent amount of those during the day here when the bream start being a little less active. So we're still kind of doing just over a fish a minute, basically. The bream are just too small. There's a nice one. That was on the large one hook though. I remember it wasn't that many. It might have been 2 leveling series ago. I was fishing for white bream on bottom setups here at Old Berg. Had a 20 or 22 hook on, and we hit a trophy bream. I don't know if y'all remember that. But it just shows you, like, I think of it all as random number generators. And having a bigger hook certainly moves the RNG into your favor. But it doesn't eliminate the possibility of small fish getting on big hooks or big fish getting on small hooks. It's still going to happen. You're just pushing the numbers in your direction. Somebody just caught a 3.6 chub on a telestick. Big chub for a telestick. Smallest hook size, but one of the larger bream we've had. Couple of nice ones back to back right there. So let's go by weight. Bream 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When you have the ideal bait and it's a really good bream spot, you easily get 21 over a kilo in the same amount of time we've been fishing here. So this is not ideal, but as you'll see in a minute, we're still doing okay. And if nothing else, we have leveled up our bottom fishing a lot. It's always nice to have something to fish for at night. If there's not like a rough cafe order or you don't know of a good rough spot, being able to come do bream for a night, make 50 to 150 silver or whatever is so nice. And then there's always stuff you can do in the daytime, especially if you're following cafe orders with, other fish species. There's usually something you can fish for. If nothing else, just go float fish for like bleak and dace and stuff. Sometimes there's good bleak spots here at Old Berg. Now there's no dace. I say that so confidently. I'm pretty sure there's no dace. There's bleak and frog, but no dace. I'm going to stick with that. Bleak, frog, but no dace. That's actually a crucian. That is so close to trophy size. We are at 10-meter clip over here. Not far from camp. We're just going to sit here just a teeny bit longer. I just wanted to kind of see what... This is well past ideal bream time, by the way. But I'm trying to see like what other... If like crucians keep coming out, if roaches keep coming out. I'm not sure we have the ideal hook sizes on for that, but... Let's just see what happens. Well, it has really slowed down here. Okay, we'll take that as a we'll take that as a sign to let's go check the store out. Also, the cafe. You never know when that 1 kilo bream order is going to be there. I think we did that last time we went bream fishing here, right? Ooh, something must have just gotten on. Interesting. It just hit it as we picked it up. We caught 44 fish in 34 minutes. That morning bite was intense. That was good. I feel like it'll be 50 silver for the bream, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe a little bit more. Nah, I don't know. I just got to remember how few we actually had that were marker size. We should have targeted that, but we didn't check the cafe before we went out there. Oh, so the only bream order is trophy, and without better harvesting bait skill, I don't think we're very likely to hit a trophy right now. So let's look. Okay, overall, we're at 91 silver. Wow, that's really good. What about the bream? Yeah, 80 silver for the bream. Okay. Yeah, look at these bream. Almost 8 silver apiece. But notice the drop off when you go under a kilo. It's a significant drop off. That's why you want to have as many as you can up here above 1 kilo. That's going to greatly increase the amount of silver you make. But 91 silver is awesome. Very, very good. Okay, so let's look at this. The difficulty here is, obviously, by the time you have made enough silver to purchase the equipment I'm about to show you, you will be high enough level to go to Volkov. And Volkov is like a big city. Not that you see the city in the map, but it's based on a river that runs near a big city. And so the idea is that the stock in the store is much better because it's near a big city. Where some of the stock on some of these stores that are out in the boondocks, you know, far away from civilization, the stock is a lot worse or different prices. So like this store is very expensive. So you kind of have to ignore the prices of what I'm about to show you. It's just cheaper if you get it somewhere else. But you got to be level 16 to use it. This is the Fortuna carp rod I was telling you about. So if it was me, my next equipment purchase might be something like this. What you like about the Fortuna carp rods is they are relatively cheap. Remember, a little cheaper than this. And they go up to 39 kilos load capacity. That means that for carp fishing, the heaviest carp fishing setup you can use is 36 kilo. You just can't do heavier than that. If you're using carp rigs, that's what you're maxing out at. So something that has 39 kilos, obviously that's strong enough to hold 36. So you're going to be able to use Fortuna carp rods for a long time. You're kind of buying them forever. Like some of the equipment you get along the way, you may not use long term. Fortuna carp rods you can use as long as you want to. And then what would I consider putting on them if I was willing to go this direction? Would be caliber HSV. Again, it's a little less than this because this is an expensive store here at Old Berg. You got to be level 20 to use these, but don't worry about it. By the time you save enough silver to get all of this, you are going to be level 20 or pretty close to it. So that's the setup I would be going for. You've got 15.4 max drag. You've got a huge spool. Even at like 0.36 millimeters, you can fit 472 meters of line. That's why it's such a good carp fishing reel. And even though that looks like a lot of silver, that's not that much silver compared to real expensive carp equipment or real expensive gear in this game. So that's what I was describing to you earlier while we were bream fishing as the option that I would consider. Now, carp rods, where we got the Fortuna carp rod from, you cannot use these at Copper Lake. That caliber HSV is a size 80 or an 8,000 reel. You can't use that at Copper Lake either. So that's the only downside. So let's say you wanted to go the feeder rod route and you did not want to wait as long. A rod that I've always liked is the Fortuna feeder. This costs 400 and something silver if you're getting it at a reasonable place, not Old Berg. This goes up to 19 load capacity. So as long as you are setting it up with equipment less than 19 kilos strong, then you can use this rod without fear of breaking it. At least until you wear the rod out some. And then what reel could you go with if you don't want to wait as long as the Caliber HSV? On the real cheap possibility would be something like a Pulsar 6000 or a Saber 60, 1200 silver. Somewhere else it's probably 1100 something, low 1100s. But 9.9 max drag. This is a little borderline. I like these reels a lot. And I also like those Fortuna, the feeder rod I just showed you, the Fortuna feeder FD420. These are very cheap for how much value you're getting here. But people will rightly ask the question, what fish are you going to go for with this little bit bigger feeder setup that you can't go for with the feeder setup we already have? And the answer to that question is there are a few, but how many of those are you actually going to be targeting? It just depends on how flexible you want to be, how patient you want to be, how long you want to save. I mean, I've never been sad that I have these reels. I like these reels. They are a little underpowered to actually fish for carp, like real big carp on. Just a little too, not quite strong enough for that. And if you try to turn them into spin fishing reels, like to troll Cory, you can do it. It's fine. It's not ideal, but it's fine. See, when we hit level 16, we'll be at Cory Lake. And one thing that I would consider doing, if I didn't want to save all the way for the Caliber HSVs, I might consider getting 2 Saber 60s just so that I could troll Cory, just to mix it up. Cory is mostly a spinning lake, although sometimes float and bottom feeder fishing can be okay there. But mostly it's where you get out on the boat and you troll. And you catch lake trout and Cory char and stuff like that. It's a blast. It's so fun. And so if I wanted to be able to like work that into the rotation of stuff that I was doing, I might consider getting a couple of those Saber 60s and some kind of cheap. Remember the Saber 60 is about 10 kilos of strength. So that means you can go real cheap on the spinning rods. Like if you wanted to, you could go extra fishing heavy, 15.4 load capacity. At another lake, this probably costs like 400 or 500 silver. I don't know. It's out of stock here, but and you could troll. You could use a Saber 60 in this and troll Cory. It's a legit strategy. So like I said before, there's a lot of directions you can go. And I know everybody wants to know, like, what should I do next? And frankly, there's just not an exact answer to that because there's so many options. And that's what makes the game, partially what makes the game so fun. And by the way, if you're just like primarily into spin fishing, or certainly if you're primarily into float fishing, then the answer to this may be totally different from anything I've said. So ask around, get into communities, talk to people about it, do your own research, use Blunty's spreadsheet to link to other resources so you can really examine what's going on with some of this equipment. The more you understand how the game works and how this equipment works, the better decisions you'll be able to make. But the other thing I would say is, like, you're gonna not just make mistakes, but you're gonna make decisions in the game when you're new that as you play more and more and look back, you might not think was the best of decisions, but that's okay. Like, we've all done that. If your primary focus is feeling like you're progressing and having fun, like, I don't think you can go wrong. there's not like a race going on. Just enjoy the journey. Enjoy the fishing. Have fun. If you really want to try to be efficient, then you can think about some of the advice that you might get from me or other people, but just enjoy it. Okay, so we didn't go too long this time, but we got a little bream fishing in. I will continue to try to look at active spots, and we'll see how long we go with this series. But this is certainly, like, getting to this point always feels like, okay, we're about to unlock Corey, and we've kind of got our equipment set. As we move forward, what I'm likely to be focused on is leveling up this bait harvesting, eventually leveling up ground bait, because once we have the bream baits, we want to be able to unlock anise oil so we can make bream ground bait. So that means getting to 30% there. And what's fun is that we're almost to 35% on classic hair, so we can start practicing with boilies and stuff on crucian and gibbles. All right, folks, tight lines. I will see you next time.